Good morning. My name is Chris Olson, and as this morning's worship associate, I would like to welcome you to the Unitarian Universalist Church in Eugene. Now let us enter worship with a chalice lighting, the symbol of our Unitarian Universalist faith. I would like to invite up Eileen Waters, who is going to light the chalice for us today. These words are by Reverend Joseph M. Cherry. If we have any hope of transforming the world and changing ourselves, we must be bold enough to move into our discomfort, brave enough to be clumsy there, loving enough to forgive ourselves and others. May we, as a people of faith, be granted the strength to be so bold, so brave, and so loving. And now let us say together the words of our mission, which affirm our shared purpose. Empowered by love, we transform ourselves and serve our world.
I brought some props. Hello, my name is Liz Elaine LaVenture. I am a transgender woman in my 70s. My pronouns are she and her. For visual description, I'm wearing multicolored patchwork bib overalls, a purple keffiyeh, my UU medallion necklace, and a Los Alamos pride pin, both given to me by a friend in Los Alamos, New Mexico. I have gray hair, topped by a purple beret. Now that Suzanne and Joe have led us in that centering hymn, I want to take that feeling just a little bit further. And as most of us know, Reverend Jen likes to lead us in mindful breathing exercises. I want to attempt to do a similar mindful breathing meditation, and I want to center peace. Now that we're centered, I want to bring peace into our center. So we'll do this. It'll be brief. We'll breathe like 6 times, 2 times just to practice the breathing. Breathe in slowly. If you can breathe in through your nose, it's better, because then you can focus on feeling the breath as it goes past your bridge. Breathe slowly and deeply, hold it for a second, and breathe out the same way, completely and slowly. We'll do it 2 times to practice, and then the 3rd time, as you hold your breath for a second, feel peace in your body. Feel that peace growing inside of you. And then when I give the prompt, exhale. The 4th time, we'll hold the breath. And when you release it, release that peace to our beloved UUCE community. 5th time, same routine. Send that peace out to this country, the United States. The 6th time, same deal. Send peace out to the whole world. And people on Zoom, you can do that too, because we're all doing this together. The energy isn't separated by virtual stuff. So that's the deal. Okay, everybody ready? Get comfortable. Feel centered. Now breathe in slowly and deeply. Hold. Release that breath. Okay, 2nd time. Breathe in slowly and deeply. Hold. Release the breath. Okay, breathe in. Hold. Send peace out to our community here and on Zoom. 4th, breathe in. Hold. Okay, release your breath and peace. Send it to our whole country, north to south, Pacific to Atlantic. I lost my place. Oh, 6 times. Okay, breathe in. Hold your breath. Exhale and send that peace out to the whole world. We all know there's places that definitely need it right now. Okay, so I almost forgot. I brought along my roommate. He's a real lamb. His name is Pink Floyd. Oh, and if you notice, his lips don't move, but I seem to be talking. So now that I've lightened the moment, the subject at hand: radical welcome, inclusion, accompaniment, representation. What are we talking about? This is hard because I love being a member of the UUCE community. There are many kind and wonderful people here. I feel affirmed and respected by many folks, but I want to be honest about radical inclusion, and my reflections are based on my experiences here. So what do we mean by radical welcome or inclusion? All power to people who look like me. That's performative, but I would say that's not radical. It's not inclusive, and certainly not welcoming to most. I brought along the dictionary, Oxford Dictionary, one of the best. Welcome is very pleasing because it's much needed or desired, and people are allowed or invited to do a specific thing. Inclusion is the act of including or the state of being included, or a person or thing that is included. Radical, one version is supporting complete political or social reform. The other one is departing from tradition, something new. Okay. I forgot after the meditation I was going to ring the bell like we used to do. So, sorry. I'm not a professional public speaker. So what does or what would radical inclusion look like in the UUCE context? My experience is that there are multiple LGBTQ plus folks here every Sunday. There are people of color, Latinx, Indigenous, AAPI, and other folks. That shows welcome to an extent, but what of inclusion? How many minorities or marginalized folks are on committees, teams, projects, in the choir? I think radical welcome would lead to inclusion, which means that staff and team leaders are making an effort to meet marginalized folks where they're at, to deep listen, assess what they need to be comfortable, and allow them to feel included as their full selves. If technology is an issue, such as Google referring to a legal name as an alias, then misspelling it, and then putting that person's name in quotes, try to understand that that would be offensive and triggering. If a group member is misgendered by another member, please deal with that in an affirming manner. Don't just blow it off. Don't expect the marginalized person to do all the work. I will say a radical welcome should organically lead to inclusion. Diversity of inclusion is radical, and that is radical representation. Now, when new people or visitors see people that look like themselves here, the circle is complete and ever expanding to include anyone and everyone. Another way to look at it is an analogy. On Christmas weekend, when Ryan invited me to be a part of the service, I was watching CNN. On holidays, news stations tend to do human interest stories instead of hard news. They did an interview with Mike Krzyzewski, Coach K, the men's basketball coach at Duke University. The commentator asked Coach K why he was so successful. He had coached at Duke for over 40 years. He won over 1,100 games. He won multiple national championships, and coached several Olympic teams. He said most teams begin by saying, "Leave your egos at the door." Coach K said, "I hate that saying. Why would you say that? Why would you not bring your full self? Bring everything you've got. Bring who you are. Why would you leave something that you are out? If you can get everybody playing with all their talent, why wouldn't you want to maximize the potential?" Coach K then went on to share a story from the Olympics. 3 NBA stars that had never played together before were now teammates on the world stage. The practice involved the star shooter running down center court and the 2 guards flanking him down both sidelines. The timing, the passes weren't getting the ball to him to make the shot. The shooter and the guards then went over to Coach K on the sidelines. The shooter said, "Sorry, Coach, I'll change what I'm doing." The guard said, No, we'll change what we are doing. We've never played with anyone like you, with your gifts." Coach K then said to CNN, "We make the umbrella bigger so we can put everybody under the umbrella and develop common ground to achieve a common goal." So these are my reflections. What would radical inclusion and accompaniment look like to you at UUCE? Can we build a bigger umbrella, a radically inclusive, beloved community together? May it be so. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Stephanie Dorman. I'm a graying white woman shaped like a butternut squash. I use she, her. Last fall, my co-presenters today, Liz and Ryan, facilitated a course on trans inclusion. In one of our sessions, we learned about 3 modes of church behavior, as described by Episcopalian minister Stephanie Sellers: invitational, inclusive, and radically welcoming. The invitational church lets you know we exist and opens the door when you show up. The inclusive church makes efforts in its functions to incorporate a range of cultures, generations, and identities. The radically welcoming church strives to create a sense that everyone belongs with everything they bring. Citing our individual experiences, workshop participants couldn't resist choosing just one of the labels to box up our church's behaviors. Unsurprisingly, not everyone picked the same label. I have since remembered it would be wise to aspire to be all 3, to be inviting, welcoming, and inclusive. It's the radically welcoming behavior that interests me most. How do we build a vibe that signals each one of us belongs as our whole, complicated, delightfully messy selves? How do we accompany each other through the milestones, the mundane, and the strange or uncomfortable? We have numerous opportunities for companionship. UUCE, like most faith communities, carries at its core the responsibility to offer ceremonies and rituals for rites of passage and the regular cycles of life: child dedications, memorials, holiday celebrations, joys and sorrows, graduations, weekly services, etc. We also have gobs of activities for dignified, norm-centered relationship building. Potlucks, coming up on Tuesday, connection circles, thank you, Dick, committees, fundraisers, music groups, thank you, Joe, movie nights, and book clubs, etc. I wonder, though, how we're doing with the radical part. Can we accompany each other through tense experiences? Are we curious about what the other person sees, hears, tastes, smells, and values? For example, what happens when trickster energy with body odor enters our well-ordered meetings and interrupts the round-robin share? What's the response when a congregant shares that the default way we do communication forces them to relive a difficult battle to claim their name? Are we radically welcoming to the nervous newcomer expected to wait out in the cold before an evening meeting because they don't know the door code? These questions are all about what we do with the uncomfortable as we aim for right relationship in a beloved community. 3 years ago, I learned about a concept that helped me think differently about tension and my limitations with fully welcoming people. Perhaps it will be useful. The idea was to think of everyone as a potential refrigerator buddy. That's someone who can freely open up my fridge and help themselves. When I first thought about this, I realized no one fit that. I didn't even have room for my spouse or my kids to help themselves without asking, because the food might be for dinner, or it might be a leftover that is mine. My history with food insecurity and rigid training about who deserved what put limits on my relationships. As I warmed up to this idea, I realized the closest I had to refrigerator buddies were all family members, which meant I shared food freely with alcoholics, climate change deniers, adulterers, drug addicts, teen parents, high school dropouts, unapologetic, racists, misogynists, and homophobes, more than one convicted pedophile, and someone who served time for attempted murder. Yet my memories about these people are about bicycles, Barbies, Hot Wheels, Kansas City Chiefs, woohoo, and eating chicken fried steak together at my nephew's wedding. I know their birthdays and their addresses and their children's hobbies. I care about them, even with the details I find challenging. Is this affection okay? Or is it some kind of misplaced or toxic version of family loyalty? It feels heavy. Then, I was introduced to the Othering and Belonging Institute at the University of California, Berkeley, where integral ideas are bridging and breaking. In brief, breaking is walling ourselves off from relationships, while bridging is remaining curious about another's story to try to continue the relationship. Breaking is flattening the other person because of one divisive idea or behavior. Bridging is holding the tension that our values, priorities, and behaviors don't match, or yet we are inherently connected with each other. The affection I feel for my family was about those connection points, the stories we share. They provide the planks for bridge building. Now, there's an important caveat about bridging. It's a choice. If I feel unsafe, unwilling, or just incapable, I don't have to bridge. I hold that as a release valve, giving myself the grace to let it be okay sometimes I just can't. That also means extending that grace to each other, because sometimes a person might not want to bridge with me. It's okay. The beauty in this is that a community practicing radical welcome, in that community, there may be others who do have the capacity to accompany another in that moment. Our congregational covenant ends with this promise. We covenant to remember that how we are with each other is the foundation upon which we build the beloved community. Accompanying each other, learning each other's stories, and sitting with tension are all part of that foundation. Thank you for holding that promise with me.
This reading is from Soul Matters, and it's not attributed to anyone. Is it possible that being on the inside leaves you out of the loop? What if the margins aren't narrow? What if that space of exclusion is also a position of perspective? What if being shut out allows you to understand the insiders better than they understand themselves? Why do so many seek the safety of that inner circle anyway? Don't we know that circles not only keep others out, but also the air? Haven't we learned that it's on the edge of circles that hate makes its home? So even if you weren't among the ones who put the circle in place, by allowing it to linger, don't you carry the burden of responsibility as well? What if who we are doesn't end at the barriers of our own skin? What if sin is believing that you can put the puzzle together with only the pieces that belong to you? What if heaven is the moment you realize that none of us can get there alone? What if the only true freedom lies in the willingness to fight against that which imprisons someone else? And what if these all questions are a matter of life and death? Or is it a matter of dying to live? After all, didn't the Nazarenes say we must lose our life in order to find it? Haven't all the sages said that the solitary self must perish for the larger we to live? If that is true, then let's widen the circle until it breaks. For as long as the circle exists, pieces and parts of ourselves will always lie on the other side of the line. So let us push, pull, twist and tear, dig underneath, and climb over the top. Do whatever it takes to meet each other face to face. And having found each other, let us stare and struggle, fight and forgive, call in and call out until me and you dissolve into us. Is there any other way we can become whole?
I have loved my role as Director of Faith Formation over the last year and a half. So I want to start by thanking you for trusting me. One realization that came to me soon after taking on this position is just how much I have to learn. I started out not knowing how much I didn't know, but at least now I'm getting an idea of knowing how much I don't know. That's better, right? As a learner, I am eager to dive into opportunities that build my skills as a teacher, as a staff member of this church, and as a representative of Unitarian Universalism. And in the fall, I was honored by the opportunity to facilitate a series of workshops on trans inclusion in congregations from the Reverend Michael Slack and Alex Capitan, a fantastic group of folks, both from UUCE and from First Congregational Church in Eugene, met to discuss the important steps to building radical welcome and accompaniment in our church spaces. And I'm very thankful to all of them for their thoughtful sharing. So, are you ready to hear the key to radical welcome and building the beloved community? The magic steps, the checklist that we need to master? There isn't one. I'm sorry. I admit I went into this series with pen and paper ready to transcribe the magic recipe, the clear map to follow to show us the way. But there isn't one, darn it. And it took me an embarrassingly long time to understand why. Just as each human being in this sanctuary is unique, so is every congregation. An Episcopal church in Tennessee has a different community and needs than a UCC church in Oakland or a UU church in Eugene. There is no cookie-cutter way to build beloved community and no prize committee ready to award us a trophy if we finally do meet specific criteria. Ungendered bathrooms, check. Pride flag waving, check. Black Lives Matter banner, check. Pledge waivers for membership for those with financial need, check. Book groups to study anti-racism work, check. Reviewing white supremacy characteristics in board meetings, check. These ideas are good and necessary ways to start, but they don't take us to our goal. These are the first steps to show us the direction that we want to go in, but they are really just the tip of the iceberg in revealing the unspoken culture of a church. So I may not have a checklist, but I do have a list of questions that we can ask ourselves. Once we welcome a newcomer to our door, do they feel included? Or are they invited to watch and learn and adapt to the ways that we do things? Do they feel like their contributions are valued? Or do we send the message that they should fit themselves into the roles that we've prescribed for them? Do we invite them into relationships and approach them with a spirit of curiosity and collaboration? Or do we hear about a critique or harm done and jump to defensiveness? Do we freely experiment with other ways to meet and worship? Or do we hold a grudge when something feels too different? I wholeheartedly confess that a few years back, when I heard it was a whole church spirit jam Sunday, I turned around and walked right out the door. But now I wish I hadn't. Because it's okay to try something new. It's okay to see tables when you get here and think, really? This setup, by the way, was one that was suggested by our youth group. This was their plan for rows and tables and invitations to do something with our hands if we need to. So my challenge to you is to try that uncomfortable or unfamiliar worship service. I promise that if there isn't something in it that speaks to your soul in a given week, there will be something next Sunday or the Sunday after that. And you just might feel uplifted by something that you least expected. I challenge you to consider a class, a meeting, a group, or event, even if you think it's not something your crowd of people attends. I challenge you to put yourself in someone else's shoes the next time you hear of a conflict or harm. I challenge you to say hello to someone new today. As I prepared for this service, I reviewed the Trans Inclusions workshops. I read Radical Welcome by the Reverend Stephanie Spellers, and I talked to our own youth group. And what I heard again and again and again was relationships, relationships, relationships. Getting to know people on an individual level is what builds bridges like nothing else and can teach us so much. During our workshop series, Michael and Alex both shared times in Unitarian Universalism when they felt othered, disregarded, and disrespected. Michael shared an experience about feeling ridiculed by a church member when he shared that he was a Unitarian Universalist Christian. Alex shared per experience as a youth when per youth group was asked to plan a service, but then their suggestions and offerings were outright rejected because that's not the way we do things here. While Michael and Alex were frank that there had been times when being transgender UUs had broken their hearts wide open by our faith, the instances that they shared weren't directly related to them being trans or non-binary folk, but were other parts of their identity. So are we ready to see people as their whole selves? If we could not just welcome, but weave the white middle-class transgender couple, the well-educated immigrant, and the indigenous atheist into our community, are we doing the same for the HIV-positive military veteran currently struggling with a substance abuse order, the queer disabled Black man, the unhoused elderly couple? At UUCE, are we free to reveal our whole selves? Recently, I watched a documentary, American Symphony, on Netflix. It followed musician John Batiste as he struggled to write his first symphony. Something he said really struck with me. He said that a musician cannot live without tension. If a musician gets too comfortable, it keeps beautiful music from happening. I think we can take this sentiment and carry it with us to worship and ministry as well. If we are too comfortable, too set in our ways, are we really opening ourselves up to the possibilities of others? Are we doing the necessary work to make space? And yes, that means taking less space ourselves for traditional ways. So those of us with different visions of the holy and sacred can honor our ways of sharing our values. I realize I'm asking a lot. This is hard stuff. These are hard questions. As the Reverend Stephanie Speller says, building radical welcome of diverse multicultural inclusion takes patience, perseverance, courage, curiosity, and humility. But I think we're up to it. We are strong, loving people committed to our covenantal faith. As a non-creedal faith, without a test of belief or theology, we have a different kind of commitment to ourselves and each other. We cannot live as Unitarian Universalists in isolation. It is the actions of our lives and relationships with each other and living into our shared principles and values that enable us to embody our faith. So what will you do today, this week, this month, to communicate your values and honor the sacred as we work toward the beloved community? We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. And I'm going to offer a benediction today as a prayer from the Reverend Sarah Klingler Osborne. With the dawn of a new year, may we build upon a vision of grace and liberation, deepening our commitments to each other and to the wider community. Let us be vulnerable and courageous as collaborators in creating a more loving world. And may we remember to observe and celebrate the beauty and wonder that surrounds and sustains us. Blessed be. As you go, please take a moment to greet your neighbor, especially if you don't know them yet, and feel free to dance your way out of the sanctuary with the postlude.